All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you guys for coming out. This session will have April Pelfrey and Philip Peavy joining us from Georgia. They're in the same county. April joins us from Central Gwinnett High School, and Philip joins us from Paul Duke's STEM High School. A little bit about each of them. April started in industry. She used to be a spy, from what her students say. Worked for the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. Okay, or that was next door. I couldn't really tell. And then Philip, interesting thing about Philip is he's one of the few people I've met that has been to Iceland. But they both teach cybersecurity courses, some game design, some intro to computer science. And the thing I thought was interesting about April is that she is the drone club advisor, which would be a pretty fun role. And with that, I'll turn the time over to them.
Hello, can you hear us?
All right. So welcome. So we are going to be kind of just talking about how to start cybersecurity for the district. This year, it's fairly new. We teach in a pretty large county in the state of Georgia. And we have the opportunity, I guess, today to kind of talk about how we started it for the district and how it's being implemented into the district-wide.
Yeah, because I know for us, cybersecurity is becoming like the new thing and it's big, but it's like, how do you start? And so kind of how we've gone through that process. And as April mentioned, she has industry background. I got my degree in education, middle school education, by the way. So I don't have industry background and I'm just learning this as I go. So we kind of have both perspectives.
So just the takeaways is really the prototyping, piloting, and implementing the courses in the district and how we went about that. Using the virtual labs within Test Out, and then also adding the hands-on experience to include more standards that our state has that aren't in Test Out. And then building the community and business partnerships, which is really the biggest part. So at the beginning of this, we started this process about 3 years ago. I actually started teaching 3.5 years ago. And so when I came in, I just told them with my background, I had been living in DC and spent about 15 years of my career working with the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. And so I had an understanding of how important cybersecurity is and why it would be important for the school systems to be teaching it, because those kids now, especially with technology, like cybersecurity is in every business. And to be able to have career pathways for these kids with jobs that are out there and to help fill it. So our big four were: what courses do we need to offer? What curriculum are we going to use? And then how to market the program, and then really what is the final outcome for the students? Because it's really about what are we doing that's going to help benefit them to either get them into college or a career.
And so April was able to look at this kind of like at a district level, like what are we going to do? How do we do all this? But also it's almost at the school level, like, because we work in a county, a big county. Individual teachers do different things. And so looking like, well, what are we going to do across the board? Or we're going to have it more individualized.
So why cybersecurity? The first thing I had to do in our district is sell it to the district. I had to make sure that they understood why it was important and why we need to be doing it. And one of the biggest things was it's estimated that like in 2021, there's going to be more than 3 million cybersecurity jobs out there. And there's not 300, or 3 million, not 300, sorry. There's not that many trained cybersecurity employees, so the gap is huge. So we have the advantage to provide curriculum and course and knowledge base to these kids to give them potential jobs, and so the marketing. So with selling it to the administration and to our district, it was really about that. What's that final outcome for the kids? Because that's what they want to know. They want to know, what are the students going to get out of these courses, and why are you going to be teaching it? And so we just brought in a bunch of data to show them that cybersecurity is the new big up-and-coming thing, And we really need to make sure that the kids have that knowledge base so that they can get into careers where there are job openings. And like, I also teach game design. And so with that, you know, every kid wants to be a gamer. And they want to design video games, but how many video game job developers are out there? It's just not that many. And so you try to steer them towards jobs that are still cool, but that are there and available. And cybersecurity is a big one.
And for me, I've taught computer science for the past 4 years, and I love computer science, but the thing is, I tell them, look at it from a business perspective. You're owning your own business. Do you want to get a person who has a computer science degree, mainly focusing on programming, that can help you make some software, stuff like that? Or do you want to keep somebody who has a degree in cybersecurity, who has a degree in network administration, who can protect your data and not have it get released to the world? So that having the kids think like that even is like, wait, well, they both sound cool, but maybe one might be more beneficial because I might probably be able to keep a job and get a job that's pretty high paying.
So building the prototype, once I finally, I got the district on board with doing it, we are lucky enough to have the state, well, lucky, unlucky, I guess, because the state already had a cybersecurity pathway. It was already established. The standards were already there. Our county, of course, we like to take the state standards and then make our own standards. So we have to go through that process. And with our county, the way that they do it, we take our state standards for those pathway classes and we bring in industry people and then teachers and other community members to kind of go through the AKS for the state standards to develop our Gwinnett County standards for our district, which is a whole process within itself. That process took us about a year to finally get our standards established and convince our industry. I sat in talks with industry individuals because they were concerned about our standards say demonstrate whatever knowledge, right? So demonstrates that big word, and they kept getting stuck on how are you going to be able to show that these kids can demonstrate these things. And so we went back and forth on a lot of that because what you learn is the business world, they want that real world experience. They want to see that the students have that real world experience. So you have to show how are you going to do that. And so then I had to convince my own school to let me teach it. So because of my background, it made it a little easier for me. I spent a lot of time in data analysis and security analysis with NGA, and I was able to show that I had the industry knowledge, but I also knew that most of the teachers in our district are not going to have that industry knowledge, and they've got to be able to teach those courses, and they're a little nervous about it. So I was going through, and you create buy-in from my admin, and then I have to create buy-in from the other teachers in the district because just my high school, we have 23 high schools in our district. So just my high school teaching it's not going to help. We need to get it out. And so convincing other teachers that they would be able to teach it without the industry knowledge. And then creating an advisory board so that we can bring in those business partners. I talked about that earlier and how important that is for us with the industry, especially if you're in a content that you're not really strong or familiar with, having those business industry people that can come in and talk to the kids and give them those real world scenarios that maybe you don't know kind of helps. So we had to create the advisory board and then decide on what our end of pathway certification test is. We set it up in 3 courses. Our pathway is 3 courses. We'll talk about those 3 courses, and then at the end of the 3, they take an end of pathway test. And so for us, we decided on that Security Plus as our end of pathway test on that. So going through with creating them.
And again, with this buy-in from the school level is not just simply, oh, let's get an administration, getting your technology team with the buy-in. Because they're always like, well, hey, you're learning all this networking stuff. The kids can learn, our kids, we taught them HTML, CSS. They already started manipulating websites online. So hey, mom, dad, I have an A, when they didn't. So having to have that buy-in of wait, no, we're teaching all this stuff, but we need to go further and have that safe environment, which we'll come into later.
Right. So for us, we have 2 different advisory boards. We have a STEM advisory board for our county that the county has created, and so you just go in and I presented to the county advisory board about cybersecurity and why we were going to do it, and then we created a local school advisory board with local business partners, which when I talk about the piloting in a few minutes, we'll talk about how they really came in to really help us out with internships and mentorships and things like that. But creating the advisory board, we did it with local businesses so that we could use those businesses for field trips or for internships or mentorships. So we're in a little small city, and I did computer science and like IT related companies that we brought in. We have a healthcare and then some IT businesses that we create. We meet quarterly with them, and it's really what they want to know is what they can do for us. Like what? So we've learned with our advisory boards, like if we bring them a list and a budget and hand it to them, they'll go through and just look at it and be like, oh, we can do this, we can do this, and we can do this. And then you're not really begging them all of the time. You're just showing them your budget and your plan, and they're deciding what they want to do. So it's a little easier than trying to go and get funding and sponsorships and stuff, because it's just less begging, which is nice.
And I know for me, so I got to this is my first time actually being able to work with an advisory board, and I learned so much. I don't know how many of y'all schools actually have an advisory board, but being able, because I've always been I want to teach them computer science, I want to teach them this, I want to teach them that, but then hearing all these people like, well, I have new employees coming into my business, and they know all this stuff, but they do not know how to work with other people. And I'm like, oh. So teaching those skills of teamwork, teaching those business skills, those are something they really are looking forward to. Having somebody who can do really well at interviewing, things like that. And so having that advisory board has been coming really great. And also, we actually, was really helped build my school cybersecurity program, has been to actually have the advisory board come in and speak to students who might be interested in that area. One of our alumni from my school's district actually works at Ernst & Young, and she had to come in and talk to a bunch of students. And it was great to see someone who is a woman talk to a bunch of girls as well, to have that representation. And she has that connection with the community, and the kids are like, oh, whoa, I never even thought about doing something like this in my life. Maybe I could be like her. So having that connection with your community really actually helps. Having them come in, and like, how many of y'all have projects during the school year? Mm-hmm. Not many. When you have a project, ask people from your community to come in and see them. Have them be the judges. We even had a teacher come in and have like kids promote something they made, and had to actually have interviews and have like a Shark Tank where they actually invested money into their product. So having those people from industry come in and give them good feedback, it makes the kids nervous, makes the kids uncomfortable. That's great, because they're getting that real world experience beforehand.
The other thing with the advisory boards for us is we set up, my school has, we do job shadows, so I go one each semester. My school pays for my sub, and I go to their business for the day to see what it is, what they're doing, and what their needs are. Because really, I'm training their next employees eventually. So what do you need? What focuses need to happen, and what's your day-to-day like? So I can go back and talk to the kids about it. And it's also just a way to make more connections within the business itself. And so I'm not just working with one person that's coming to the advisory board meetings. I'm getting to know everyone in there. And that helps too, because I get to tell each of them what we're doing. So then when they're out doing stuff, they're always like, hey, you know, April's doing this cyber stuff over here. This would be a great opportunity for her. And then they'll start shooting me emails with other connections. So then I'm just making more connections within the community. And then in the long run, that's also getting me more equipment, because they're like when they hear about computers being donated or anything else like that, like they're getting sent to my school because they remembered that conversation we had when I was sitting in their office about needing equipment and anything like that. So it's really good to make those contacts just to build that. So piloting, we teach a 3-course pathway. Our first course we've been teaching in our county forever. It's Intro to Digital Technology. It's the starter for several of our pathways within the state of Georgia. And so it's been around, so it's been taught, so that wasn't really piloted. We just took those kids and I went into their classrooms the year before, talked to them about how cool it was. I used the word hacking often, because I'm trying to catch them and get them interested in coming in there. So it's really all those cool buzzwords. As he mentioned earlier, I'm a drone club sponsor, so I would mention the drones and how you can use that with cybersecurity and everything. And so I was really trying to sell the program to those Intro to Digital kids because they have the option to pick about 4 different pathways in that class, and you want them to pick yours. And then, so this past year, we taught the Intro to Cybersecurity, which is the 2nd course in that pathway. And doing research, you go through and try to figure out curriculum. I don't have to sell Test Out to you because you're at a Test Out conference and you already know. But we did not start with Test Out. We started with some different curriculum in the fall. And about 6 weeks in, we discovered that I was almost done with that entire curriculum that was supposed to last me the whole year. And it wasn't, it was very basic. My kids were catching on quickly. We were moving through. We were going through like 3 and 4 of their lessons in one class period. I teach on a block schedule. So I'm an AB block, so I teach my kids for 90 minutes a day, every other day. And we were running through it. And so I went to my principal and I was like, look, I need a new plan because it's not working. It's not, and after we got into the curriculum, I realized that it wasn't going to cover all of our standards. And the other part was I needed that hands-on experience. How am I going to give these kids the hands-on experience that they need? I'm a Title I school, and I'm on the school network, so they're not going to let me hack on the network. While I was trying to buy time, we took Raspberry Pis and we created servers, and I had wireless routers all over my room. And I had county IT people show up in my classroom, like the same day that we had connected all of that stuff. So I was like, and they were like, you can't. And I'm like, we're not doing anything. We're just we're just playing.
Which kind of brings you to the catch-22 of all the industry people in your advisory board saying, we want kids who have hands-on experience with all of this material, but you can't do it.
It's just that fight, right? And so then, because the county IT people came, my school IT people were all over me about what I could and couldn't do and what we needed to do. And I was showing them the standards of the class, and I was like, I have to be able to teach these things. We need a plan. I don't have my own network. You could give me my own network. I tried. But I couldn't sell them on getting me my own network. We won't talk about the fact that he has his own network, but
that's what brings us more into the part of reevaluating, which is like, hey, we're starting up cybersecurity and we want other schools to do it, so how do we get everybody to be on board with not having the same equipment?
So yeah, after we reevaluated and we realized, my principal sent me to the NICE Cybersecurity Education Conference last fall, which is where we ran into Test Out and several other options. And it's what you were looking for, right? We were looking for that real world experience that could happen in a classroom that doesn't have all the equipment. And I wanted my kids to be able to learn how to do what was covered in the standards, but I didn't have the ability to teach that without the virtual labs. So then this spring, we ran through Test Out, and we ran into several problems. One, our Intro to Digital class is not teaching what the kids need for that intro to cyber class. So we were lacking in our networking and our hardware in our intro class in order for the kids to be able to do it. Because my plan, when we were talking through it, it was Philip and me and several people from the district and Anthony over here, which I told him I wouldn't call him out, but talking through like what it was. And so we were going to do Network Pro in the Intro to Cybersecurity class, and then Security Pro in the Advanced Cybersecurity class, because our end of pathway exam is that Security Plus exam. So we needed to do that. But when we started in Network Pro this year, I could tell my kids weren't there. There was a big gap in what they were learning in that intro class and what they needed to learn in that intro class. So we are back to revamping everything again this year. So next year, this following year, school year, we'll be teaching the advanced cybersecurity class at my school. Philip and Anthony at their 2 high schools will be teaching the intro to cybersecurity course. And then we are also developing cyber for our online high school that we have. But as we went through, I was talked about the business partners and the community involvement. And this is where I got my donations, because I still wanted, I don't know if you were in the lesson or the presentation earlier about being engaged and everything. So I needed my kids not to always be online. Even though the virtual labs and everything were good, but I also had 35 kids in my classroom, and I don't have 35 computers that they can take apart and then hopefully put back together to where they work. And this is where my business partners came in handy. Because they knew the problem, they knew that we needed equipment. The businesses are redoing their what do you call them? They're updating their computers often. Yeah. They need something to get rid of, and I told them, I was like, if you keep your hard drive and just give me everything else, because the other part was them giving that hard drive, even if you wipe it, somebody's going to figure out how to get something off of it. So they would keep their hard drives, and they would give us the computers, and then the kids could build that part out, which also helped us with that gap that we had between that intro to digital and that intro to cyber, because that hardware, they hadn't had that hands-on experience. They had seen videos on how to take a computer apart and everything, but we had never done it in class. So being able to take the computers apart, putting them back together, being able to use the Raspberry Pis to create servers that you could kind of hack into and things like that. And then we also had to go through, we did field trips with them, with those businesses, so we could do it. We actually go, Lockheed Martin is in our area, and they do a really cool field trip for the students, where they take them through how they're building, how they build the planes and the step-by-step process, and then how technology is involved in that process. And then at the end, they'll talk about the cybersecurity part of it, because I've just asked them to do that part so I can cover
and
a field trip.
Getting your colleges on board too, and seeing them, because it wasn't until I actually went to the NICE conference last December that I learned that Augusta University, which is in the state of Georgia, has a cybersecurity program that's partnered up with the GBI as well as the Army, and have their cyber hub there. And I was like, this is right down the road, like 2 hours away from us. So having that partnership and finding colleges around you that have cybersecurity programs, they'll come in, they want to get those kids, because if you could train them before they even get there, they're going to be so much more advanced when they get to college. So having that partnership is also great.
2 other big things that came out for us this year with our business partners are that you see the Year Up and the Talent Path. Those are both nonprofit companies that provide mentorships and then internships with the industry for students who just graduated. So I had 15 seniors that graduated this year that went into either one of those programs, and I only found out about it because we partner with the Boys and Girls Club down the street from us, and they had reached out to the Boys and Girls Club. But both of those 2 I teach a bunch of students that are probably not going to go to college. It's just not affordable for them, or it's just not something that has been. I teach in a very low poverty area. And so my goal is to find jobs for them. Like I want to be able to have a way that when you graduate from high school, you're going to have an option to not forever live in your parents' basement. And so these two companies were huge this year. They came in and they provide, for the seniors, the graduating seniors, there's an application process, and they go in and they spend 6 months in a training course. So basically going through, but because they both focus on computer science and cybersecurity, all of my students, because they were taking cybersecurity courses already and had that knowledge base, went up in the application process because they had more experience than others. So I had 15 kids that went in. They do 6 months of mentorship training. They require them to go into their building so that they work on those employability skills that our business partners are telling us that we need. They teach them how to do communicating and being on time and how to dress professionally and all of that. They get a small stipend for that 6 months. But then the company sets them up with a cybersecurity internship with a partnering company in the Atlanta area. And they spend 6 months in that internship. And for one of them, that talent path, they're guaranteed a job making $50,000 a year at the end of that internship. That's actually more than I'm making as a teacher. So it's just, and so I've got 4 that are in that talent path. The year up, they're not guaranteed a job, but 96% of the interns get offered a job with the company that they're interning with. And then for my students, because it's kids that aren't looking to go to college because they just can't afford it, most of these companies will pay for their college after this. So they're set up. They are not. Year Up is in several big cities around the country. Talent Path is an online thing though, so it may be everywhere. Year Up, yep. So they are both highly recommended to encourage your seniors for sure, especially those that aren't looking to go straight into college. I always remind my kids I have about $90,000 in student debt. Don't do that.
Europe also has relationships with many colleges, so it could be an avenue for them.
Yeah.
Bridge that gap.
Yep. And then the other businesses on there are just our business partners that we do work related with.
And business partners too, if you have some students who are really high level students who are from economically disadvantaged homes, you can probably say, like, if you're going through the Network Plus course, hey, could you possibly sponsor a kid who has a really good chance of passing this? They just can't pay for it. And I know my school, we're already we're going to be having scholarships for those kids who have been really doing well, who can get those certifications as they go and not just at the end of the course pathway.
So we've kind of already talked about this before with the virtual labs and why we did it. So this is kind of why we shifted from the curriculum we were using to Test Out, because we needed that real world experience without having to have all the equipment. And so the virtual labs were really what it was, what we needed and how we were doing it. So in the grand scheme of things, we will do it, the way that we'll roll out Test Out in our classes is we're going to do the PC Pro in that Intro to Digital Technology course. And then we'll do the network as we had planned in our Intro to Cyber, and then Advanced Cyber will be the Security Pro to get them ready for that Security Plus certification. The advantage of doing the other two is they can take those Test Out certifications in that PC Pro and that Network Pro, which one will help them kind of get ready for those certification tests themselves, and two, just give them the certifications out there with that. So, and we've talked to the county about going through and offering for our school district. I will offer an Intro to Digital Technology course that is a cohort, basically. So those kids in that class will go into the advanced or the Intro to Cyber, so that we can really focus on that PC Pro and everything that they need to know in those advanced classes. for the cyber. And then the other intro to digital classes that we offer in our school could be for whatever other pathways that are out there. So we're looking at doing cybersecurity cohorts, not this year, but the following year, just to kind of bridge that gap that we really saw that in between that intro to digital and intro to cyber.
And then obviously adding in the hands-on activities and experiences. So, and this really goes in keeping the engagement. I know a lot of times, like for me especially, I have some material and actually where I can work with it. So it's using Test Out to actually have them use it virtually and then actually go in manually and actually have them actually see it hands-on. But then also just having fun activities with having the kids make Raspberry Pi servers, actually making their own server, which you'll see a picture in a second too.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, so one thing that Test Out doesn't really cover that's in our standards, which is going to be in a lot of high school standards, is like cryptography and ciphers and things like that. So actually having the kids use the ciphers is a great way, and not just simply like, okay, well, let's just go online. Here's what a Caesar cipher is. Actually having them move around and go around. And I actually started this in my intro course, having them actually do major ciphering in it because it's fun. I mean, cracking codes, kids love it. Adults love it. Who doesn't? I mean, it's like a puzzle. So, and then also there are some open source cybersecurity lessons that and when you get access to this, hopefully there'll be links that they can be able to click on to be able to do it. And like right here, that's actually some of my students right there using the Caesar ciphers. Actually, those two boys right there, both English language learners. So they speak Spanish as their primary language and are learning English. So even there's an English language barrier, they're actually able to sit there and do some of the stuff. And I will say, my student population, 50% of my students are Hispanic and speak Spanish. And I had 20% of the students who actually were learning English as well. And so I love Test Out because the fact the videos have manuscripts and they can be able to read it while they're listening to it, which I know some people don't think about that, but having that as a backup is a great thing. And over here, you can actually see the servers, the Raspberry Pi server activities.
So we've already mentioned that we're doing Security Plus. The link in there, I'm sure you've all seen, is the comp TA pay scale if you have a Security Plus certification. I like to show that in my intro to digital classes to kind of be like, hey, look what can happen if you take my pathway classes. And then I mentioned also like the other certifications and possibly doing the Test Out or the comp network and then our comp A for that PC Pro.
So some of the ways we're actually going to be implementing it, we have talked about this, but actually our state of Georgia actually started making middle school classes that actually one of them is a cybersecurity course. So it's actually going to be pushed out to our middle school teachers and they're all freaking out. But we're going to be helping, and it's a bunch of just basic networking type of and cybersecurity concepts. So we're actually going to be working with them, having more of a vertical alignment in our own district. So that way they can possibly then already know this material before they even get to the introductory course. And then and keep going on. And then also, we mentioned the drone club, but there's also other things. And if you probably might have heard of Cyber Patriots. If you can't really get some courses set up, or maybe if you do have online courses, another fun way is Cyber Patriots, which is actually a competition that kids can do throughout the year. And it really focuses on some of the basic skills of like dealing with basic networking, dealing with basic PC work, and administration. Hackathons, work with some of your colleges and other school districts to have a hackathon. Do it locally, and just kind of like, I mean, kids hear the word hack and like, it's like, and letting them know like, you really don't have to know that much. Just find some people, work together, and just have fun. And then, is anybody in here involved with CTSOs? So, CTSO, Career Student Technical Organization. You have FBLA, DECA, Skills USA. I think somebody else is here from Skills USA. TSA. So those are some of those out there. I know TSA just started adding a cybersecurity component for some of their competitions. So kids can actually take tests, and I think they actually are having a hackathon as well, a capture the flag on site to where you can actually compete against other kids across the state. And so it's kind of a fun way to get that camaraderie and being in a club that gets them outside just the classroom. So kind of like our answers to the questions that we had at the very beginning before we actually get to some questions. So here's kind of how we started. Key thing is really just building the program step by step, not really jumping all at once. But here's some of the curriculum that we use. Again, Test Out is really awesome, just saying. And really kind of stands out compared to other things that we've looked at. How to market the program, use the students. You can say as much as you want, but if you don't get the buy-in from a couple of students and have them get their friends in it, and then like the session before this, engaging with your students, getting to know them. Sometimes I have kids that are like, I just want to take it because you're teaching. And I'm like, that's great, you'll still learn. So being able to have that with your students and just market with them. Some kids you will get the part, hey, making a lot of money out if you can get through this entire course pathway, making $50,000 outside of high school. And then what's the final outcome? We really want the kids to be certified, be able to go into the real world and be able to work. So
That's right. Our goal is to not live in your parents' basement.
or at least be paying your parents to live in their basement.
That's true.
Hi. What certifications do the teachers need to be able to teach these courses? Like, does it have to be like they have to be their computer science teachers, or?
So for the state of Georgia, they have it so that they have to take the computer science
It's a certification test for teachers.
But that is new for us. That is as of this year, and that's all computer science. It's a new one. But what I've said, like with the middle school, they're 7th grade teachers, and most of those middle school teachers aren't coming from the industry, so they were freaking out. And so you just kind of, that's the beauty of Test Out and those lesson plans, because they're already all in there, and it has what they need to know. And so that's what I just sit down with the teachers and go through that with them so that they don't panic as much.
Yeah, the lesson plan feature with Test Out is amazing because it really does pace you through everything for that. So even if you're learning it with the students are learning it, it's like, that's great.
I just wanted to put in a quick plug for the combination of Test Out and Cyber Patriot. We have found that our students pass their Test Out tests at a much higher rate when they're involved in both. And if you haven't looked into Cyber Patriot and you want to do a cyber program,
Yeah,
I mean, even
it's
if
a
you
really
don't-
good way to get the students engaged.
I mean,
They
if
love
you're
it.
starting a program, you don't have classes, it's a great club to have for your kids. And they have the pathway, they have modules and things like that too that can teach them that when they start going through Test Out modules, oh, we've seen this before.
I have 2 questions. In regards to your tests, what are your test rates for your pass rate for your students for their certifications?
So we have not taken, because our kids won't take the certification test until after they take that advanced cyber class, which they take this year. So they'll be taking it this year and they'll take it.
So they haven't done PC Pro or Networking Plus?
No, because this year is when we realized that we have that gap, and so in the going forward, we're going to start with the IDT taking that, and we'll do that cohort because the students in that Intro to Digital class will be going directly into that Intro to Cyber, and so they'll be doing the PC Pro and then the Network Pro and then Security.
I have a quick question for the lady who mentioned Cyber Patriots up there. You use Test Out for yours. Which section of Test Out do you use?
we've set up a pathway. We just started our cyber advanced IT stuff this year, but we want students to go PC Pro first, then Linux, and then cyber. And we're looking in the future to add networking in there because that's super important, but we had to pick.
We kind of did a bit on the pass rate you asked about. So when they start with a PC Pro, they test with that one, and we're right around 50-60% pass on that PC Pro because you got the kids that test that there's nothing you're going to do. That, you know, that's about what they're going to absorb in, but they still test because we test about everybody. And on our Linux, we had a higher pass rate because I think we were doing the the Cyber Patriot, they had to use, they had
this Linux
they
is
had
involved
virtual
with it.
machines that were the Linux that were kind of, and so they took all of those skill sets and we stacked it. So I took Cyber Patriot right in hand with the test out, and then we used the test out, also their test out certification section. And for the state of Utah, that counts as an industry cert for us for those kids too. So so their Linux counts as the same as a CompTIA Linux Plus for them here. So.
I wanted to bring something up as well. You mentioned in the state of Utah, test out certifications are recognized, and there's about 15 different states where test out certifications are recognized. You can talk with your test out contact to find out if your state is one of those, but that could translate to dollars for your program. We're interested in getting in more states as well, so if you have an idea how to do that, we'd love to work with you to get that done too. But we have that on our website right now.
It's not published on the website, but I do have that list. If you
Your test out contact, just let them know, hey, is my state, can I get the list of states that are approved, recognizing test out certifications, and they can get that to you.
And if we're not on the list, we've probably tried, but one of the things we run into is getting industry endorsements. You can tell I've had something to do with that, but getting the industry endorsements, I mean, we went through one with Texas that they originally said, oh, you're not going to make it, but you can appeal. And we said, well, how many do we need? And they said, well, 15 would be a good starting point. And so we go through the instructors to the businesses that might be hiring the students, and getting 15 is actually a pretty hard task to do. So gathering those contacts that you have in industry that would say, you know what, I see value in test out certifications, that's a very big step to getting on lists in most states.
How do you cover the costs of a recertificate? And this is why we haven't in our county will pay for them to take that end of pathway test, but that's the only one the county's going to pay for. So if the kids are going to be taking anything else, it's either the kids that are going to cover it, or I'm going to figure out how to cover that somehow.
It's contracts that they sign at the beginning of the year.
Oh, so the kids are paying it?
Well, not always. There's, we have a scholarship where, I mean, it's not really a scholarship, but if they're economically,
Right.
School will cover the cost, because a lot of times it's like $25, $30. Sometimes it's contribution from our industry people, and other times, some students are used, depending on what it is, fast forward money, some of that.
Time for one more.
I just wanted to mention, I'm hearing a lot of the teachers say the same thing. Are you guys a CAPE Academy? So some of you who are having difficulty getting funding, I don't know the specifics, right? But I know if you're a CAPE Academy, which you could become one with your cybersecurity program, right? The funding that you get from the CAPE Academy has to go directly to your program. And then that money we utilize to pay for our certifications and things of that sort. So those people who are having a difficult time, you might want to consider that. And the administrator at the school cannot change that. They can't decide, oh, I'm going to give your funding to the biology department. So that's a way to kind of keep your money to yourself. So hopefully that helps. That's a CAPE Academy. Yeah, is it only in Florida?
Yeah, CAPE is only Florida.
Sorry.
So, yeah.
I'm very, very
So close,
sorry.
so close to Santa Georgia.
Sorry. Yeah. Florida throws a whole lot of money at certification. So,
But
Yeah, I do
It's-
a lot of grant writing. We did a big Bosch grant, so it could cover certification tests and stuff. But grants are a lot of work.
so we have one more. I think we have
This
one more.
isn't so much a question as it is to expound a little bit on what she said. I've been working with Cameron Davidson since 2013 to try and get the PC Pro exams on our CAPE list. What that is this year we're going to receive $800 for every industry certification we produce from a high school student. Now I have dual enrolled students, I have high school and adult. The adults pay out of pocket. It's just how it is. But the high school students are funded, and they're funded out of that CAPE money. So my suggestion is you go back and you beat your administration up that when they're in their state capitals and when they're talking to their chancellor, they start asking about funding for high schoolers for industry certification, so it's job preparatory, and they're ready to go right out of high school. They don't come back as an adult. Yeah. And you guys were so close last year, so close.
Many states have IT initiatives, and they're funded, and that could be where the funds come from.
one last comment.
I just want to mention one comment brought up CTSOs. CTSOs are really important, and if you're not participating in one, you actually need to, because it gives the chance students to participate in a competition that measures themselves. For example, my school participates in Skills USA specifically, and the actual competitions start in February and run through up to the state championship in late March. Based on that, one of the things that I did was I purposely paced out PC Pro so we'd actually be done before the competition started. And the last 2 years in a row, we've actually been named state champion in IT support services for the state. Now, if you want to feel like what it's like to live in a vacuum, have your program named the state championship by a CTSO, and then you'll suddenly discover that just about any request you make suddenly gets approved as part of the process. So I do want to emphasize that if you're not participating in a CTSO, first of all, Test Out is a great way to prepare your students for those competitions, and you will dominate those competitions going into them.
Career and technical student organization. So cybersecurity and computer science are weird. I will tell you that because we're not in one single one. FBLA has cybersecurity competitions. Future Business Leaders of America. TSA, and they have coding as well. TSA has Technology Student Association, which is more engineering based. Also has cybersecurity they just released. Skills USA. Which one? BPA. So some of these organizations actually do have where they have competitions. So your school might already have one, but say, hey, let's help out and let's have some of my kids be able to work with that. And if you can become state champions, get really high placement, it's easier for them. Like, hey, let's give you some money your way.
And it's free marketing for your programs, which is really, we really were salespeople at that. Because I need kids in my classes, so I need to sell my class to the students. So you always look for that free marketing that the kids are going to do for you.
And that's where you really get to know your students even more. It's great. Because you get that outside of classroom, like where you're still their coach, but like you get to see them outside of like what you typically see in a classroom, and you build those relationships, they'll last a lifetime. So it's great.
Thank you both.
Thank you.